Welcome back to the show, everybody. Drew Allen, your millennial minister of truth here. I want you to buckle up today. We're getting a little bit of a late start. It's Friday. Happy Friday. Happy weekend, everyone. Now, this is not just another episode. This is a forensic autopsy, all right, of a dying narrative. A couple different narratives. The first one, the one I'm going to focus on today, is, of course, the FBI seizing, 700 some odd boxes of voter-related files in Fulton County, Georgia. So we'll get into that. The second dying narrative, of course, is the one around this Minneapolis situation with ICE with Preddy, right? He was just a nice guy who a week before he got shot was spitting in the faces of ICE officers and kicking out taillights. These are not sane people out there on the streets that are these leftist activist folks. But first, for 5 years, I just want to remind you that you were called crazy. I was called crazy. We were threats to democracy. For doing what? For asking basic questions about the vote in Georgia and elsewhere in this country. Joe Biden, the most popular president in American history, 81 million votes. And he did it all from his basement. And we knew that was a bunch of baloney. Well, guess what? The FBI does not raid conspiracy theories. They raid crime scenes. And yesterday, they turned the Fulton County Election Hub into a federal evidence locker. So you can celebrate that. Things are going to get good here pretty soon. And so this gaslighting just hit a wall. All while the media, and this is the brilliance of Trump, by the way, the media is out there gaslighting about what's happening in Minneapolis. And while they're out there polishing the halo of a peaceful nurse, Preddy, federal agents were loading box trucks in Union City, Georgia. And so, again, they see 700 boxes, some odd boxes, of the very evidence that they told us didn't exist or didn't matter. So let's just get into the technical meat of why this raid is a nightmare for Democrats in Fulton County. They've tried to avoid this for 5 years. For years, they told us, we did a recount. The machines were audited. There's nothing to see here. As the, pipe burst hoax at State Farm Arena unfolded before our very eyes on election night. I mean, you remember where you were watching the election back in 2020? I mean, it was stunning, unprecedented. And we could smell a rat. And of course, there was a rat. So I want to address some of the talking points of the left. I want to dismantle some of their lies, give you some facts to present when these people try and gaslight you still. So Georgia did recount the ballots, right? But what they never did was authenticate them. They didn't do any forensic comparison of paper to machine images. There was no chain of custody verification. There was no ink or duplication analysis. And that's what the FBI is looking at right now. And that's what has them so terrified. We've got the receipts. The receipts are coming home, baby. And this is why those 700 boxes are so huge. Now let's talk about the State Farm Arena video. So first off, remember they had a so-called water main break. It turned out to be a leaky toilet. And so under that excuse and justification, that lie, they cleared the room where they were counting ballots of, GOP observers. And it was a literal lie. And then they pulled those containers from under tables covered in black cloths, and they had a bunch of ballots in them, right? So the left says, that's been debunked. Really? Really, then why did the FBI just seize these zero balance logs from those machines? Because they're looking to see if those machines were preloaded while the room was empty. And we saw what they were doing, just putting these ballots through and through and through. And by the way, it's just unbelievable they got away with this in the first place. We saw what happened with our own eyes, and they told us, well, that's not what's happening. So the FBI can finally do a forensic analysis. What should have happened in 2020? They can check for the pristine ballots that were never folded, which means they never went through an envelope. They can verify if the physical tabulator tapes actually have the signatures that 36 out of 37 Georgia officials admitted were missing. And I just want to repeat that. This is the part the mainstream media, the pretty narrative pushers, that they don't want to talk about. In December 2025, Fulton County finally had to admit the truth that 36 out of 37 election officials failed to sign the mandatory tabulation tapes for over 315,000 votes. And they went in what I'm calling, the black box, this digital wall. Because as long as these records were under seal, nobody could prove that the paper didn't match the pixels. But, a federal search warrant that was just issued and what we saw carried out, well, what does that mean? It means a judge found probable cause that those boxes contain the physical evidence of a crime. That's what this means. It's huge. It's going to blow the lid off of the 2020 election hoax, the coup, the stolen election. And remember, they tried to get Trump on RICO charges because he had a conversation saying, find the 12,000 votes. Well, if the FBI finds 12,000 ballots in those boxes that don't have a matching human voter, or if they find that 350,000 digital votes don't have a paper trail, well, the 2020 narrative suddenly isn't fishy. It's a federal felony. So now that black box of Fulton County, it's finally open. And Tulsi Gabbard, I love to watch the left reaction to Tulsi Gabbard being seen there. She looks like a spy from a movie. But she's the director of national intelligence. She was spotted on site overseeing the seizure. And what does that mean? It means this is a national security investigation now. So with the, State Farm Arena video that the left and media thinks they debunked by saying, the digital totals match the machines, or, well, they never verified whether the actual physical pieces of paper were legitimate. That's the problem. Or whether those ballots were scanned multiple times. And this is what you should just remember. It's garbage in, garbage out. If the original pool, right, of ballots, of tallies, if it was corrupted by State Farm suitcase ballots scanned without observers, well, guess what? Recounting those same ballots over and over and over again, it doesn't fix the fraud. It just confirms the count of the fraud. And furthermore, a judge would not sign a warrant for a settled issue. This warrant proves definitively that there is new, credible evidence that these physical ballots in those 700 boxes don't match the official narrative. These paper ballots, these are what you can look at and describe as the legal anchor. And under Georgia law, certification only exists if the process follows the law. And the process did not follow the law in Georgia and throughout this country. Again, 36 out of 37 officials refused to sign the tabulator tapes. You can recount a lie 100 times, but that still doesn't make it the truth. It's amazing. I was reading the story of this forced admission of these officials, 36 out of 37 that didn't sign the tabulator tapes. And, the media spins this as it doesn't matter. We were just sloppy. We've made, we've gone to great lengths to make sure this doesn't happen in the future. The point is they didn't follow the process. It was illegal and shouldn't have been certified in the first place. And by the way, when they say, well, it doesn't matter, we counted the votes 3 times. If you're counting counterfeit bills, right? Let's pick an analogy. Counterfeit bills. It doesn't matter how many times you count them. They're still fake, right? And so that's why the FBI isn't there to recount. They're there to authenticate. Authenticate. Now, what's another lie you hear from the left and the media? Oh, this was litigated in 60 courts. What does that mean? It's a nice talking point. Sounds legit, right? Well, what they don't tell you is that the judges never examined the evidence. All of these cases, these 60 court cases, they claim prove that there was no fraud. They were dismissed on standing, not on the merits. Not a single court compared the physical ballots to the digital images. And that's what the FBI is going to do now. I just want to peek over and see if I've got any hatred yet. No, not too much today, folks. It's later in the day. You know, I'm in California, so it's 2:15, 2:16. What's immensely ironic, right? Some of the poetic justice of this. It's an ultimate irony, I suppose. So they tried to use courts to jail Donald Trump for interfering, right, when he asked for an audit of these very boxes. And we know that lawfare effort collapsed in pretty spectacular fashion when Fani Willis was disqualified and the case was dismissed. But by filing those charges, in a way, they removed the legal seal that was keeping the records hidden. Remember, these things have been sitting in boxes sealed away. We weren't allowed to see what was in them. Why would they be hiding that? And these, all along, they thought they were trapping Trump, but instead they gave the FBI the probable cause they're using right now to raid the warehouse. And Trump, by the way, is seeking $6.2 million in legal fees from Fulton County. And so ultimately what they forced by trying to go after Trump on these RICO charges is they got to a place where you had admissions that created the factual basis for this, federal probable cause. And so, sorry, Democrats, the gaslighting ends where the evidence begins, and we've got the evidence now. You don't send the FBI in to haul away 700 boxes of debunked theories. You send them in to secure a crime scene. And so this narrative is in full suicide. Full suicide. We've got the boxes open. We've got the trucks moving. Not the UPS trucks that delivered fake ballots, but, the ones taking the evidence back to the FBI. And so the truth is coming home. The truth is coming home. I want to address some of the other issues that went on in 2020. First off, we know there were ballots that were not folded. They didn't have signature verification. So when they're unfolded, they didn't, go through an envelope. And so the FBI can verify if these physical tabulator tapes actually have the signatures. And as long as these records were under seal for the last 5 years, nobody could prove any of this. So if I seem distracted, I'll just be transparent with you because I'm a publicist, right? My job never stops. And I'm supposed to have somebody on another show right now that the host isn't showing up. So anyway, this is my life. All right. So this might happen again, but you get a view into the publicist's life. All right. I'm back. Okay. So let's just go into some of the stuff they did in 2020. I'm going to keep this short. I just want to cover this story mainly. One announcement I want to make to you. So next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern time, I will have Newt Gingrich on this show. So remember that 9 a.m. next Tuesday, Newt Gingrich will be on the show to talk about how we deal with this Democrat Party today. I've got a lot of important questions. I respect him greatly, Mr. Speaker Gingrich. And he's going to come on and answer those questions and talk about how we deal with this Democrat Party, how this Democrat Party is different from the Democrat Party that he was used to dealing with in his time as Speaker. So put that in your calendars, 9 a.m. on Tuesday. So look, you had these Zuckerbucks, and this is long before a single vote was even cast. You had the deck being stacked, right? $350 million from Zuckerberg in private grants, Zuckerbucks. They pitched this as COVID-19 safety, but the money didn't go to buying masks for everyone, did it? Where did that money go? Drop boxes. And tens of millions of this money, Zuck bucks, whatever, poured into deep blue strongholds like Fulton County and to Cobb County. And like I said, it paid for these unmonitored drop boxes and these massive get out the vote operations, which were only for Democrats. And they were in very specific neighborhoods. So it wasn't nonpartisan. It was a privatized operation. And this is why, Zuckerberg wants to, find himself in good graces with us. And I will never forget and forgive what he did in 2020. And then I remember, I was sitting there watching, hold on. I've got to send this text message. This is the reality. Okay. Anyway, so I remember I'm watching TV. I'm in California. I guess it was 10:30 p.m. And, they told us that, like accounting had stopped. And I don't remember if Georgia was the first place this happened, but it was one of the most significant that I remember. So they told us, okay, so what's going on here? Why are we stopping counting? Well, a water pipe burst and counting's done for the night. We're not counting anymore. So they clear the room. They send the observers home. They tell the press to leave. And then we found out later that the pipe burst was a leaky toilet that had been fixed hours earlier. And I still cannot believe that they got away with that because the entire thing was a lie. They lied to us about why they stopped counting. If they were lying about that, why would anyone believe they were, acting with integrity in the room? So you got no witnesses suddenly. We've got surveillance footage even that shows the workers pulling black containers out from under those tables covered in tablecloths. And for the next several hours, with zero oversight, they scanned those ballots. I mean, in any other industry, in any other scenario, if you were clearing a room under false pretenses to process sensitive documents, that would be called a crime. But this wasn't. So, this is a big deal. What's going on, and I'm excited to see it. I want to touch on a couple other things here. You got Don Lemon, and the left is, in hysterics right now because Don Lemon has been arrested. I saw a clip of Don Lemon, the Lemonhead, when he had his job on CNN before he was fired in disgrace. And he was salivating over the idea that Donald Trump might go to jail on the RICO charges they were bringing related to him questioning the election results in Georgia. My, how things have changed. And by the way, the Democrats gaslighting like they usually do. Oh, Trump's going after his political. I mean, they have no leg to stand on, obviously. And the point is, Don Lemon was not a passive observer. He was a participant in this interruption of a church service. And Joe Biden, sorry, Don, but Joe Biden prosecuted people to the full extent of the law who were pro-life protesters. And just because you have a camera, that doesn't shield you. Claiming to be a journalist while you are egging these people on and participating does not shield you. So, that's one of the main things I want to address here. What's happening to Don Lemon? Don't commit a crime. Don Lemon's not special. He's spectacularly unspecial, as a matter of fact. And, look, nobody's above the law, including Don. Look, that's all I want to talk about today because I got my two kids, my girls. It's late here. I was caught up with stuff today, but I wanted to tell you, I wanted to cover before the weekend this huge story about what's happening in Fulton County because it's huge. It's huge. And yes, the election was absolutely 100% stolen in 2020. All of us knew it, just like we knew COVID was a scam. You've got Fauci telling us masks don't work. And then suddenly He wants to crack down. Yeah. Masks work. Put 6 on your face. And all along, we knew they didn't work at all. So these people are liars and frauds. So the same tactic, the same gaslighting and lying took place with the 2020 election. It was in front of our faces. Everybody with a brain, most of you out there, maybe some of you were later to come to the realization, but we knew early on that COVID was a hoax, a scam. And what did they do? They wanted to put us in jail over disagreeing. And so here we have an obvious case of fraud, the biggest example in our history, unprecedented in its scale, with the unsolicited mail-in ballots and loosening or complete disregard for any kind of chain of custody requirements or signature verification, et cetera. Obviously, the point was to steal the election. It was obvious, just as obvious as the COVID stuff was a fraud. But they got away with it. And accountability is coming. And look, there have been so many crimes perpetrated on the American people and by the Biden administration and the deep state and all of it that, you're not going to solve it all in one fell swoop. It's going to take time. But this is a big step. And I mean, just think about the conversations we're going to have in the future on this show when it turns out that we have definitive proof that they stole the election. What does that mean for the 4 years of pain and destruction we experienced under the Biden autopin administration? These are perilous times for the country. They truly are. They truly are. But anyway, look, I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. There's other news I wanted to get into, but I thought this was an important story to cover. And remember, Tuesday, 9 a.m. Eastern, join me on this show to hear me have a discussion with Speaker Newt Gingrich about where we are in the country, what we do, what kind of compromise does he think is even possible with, a party that has nothing in common with patriotic Americans anymore. All right, folks, God bless you all. This is Drew Allen, your Millennial Minister of Truth. Love you guys. Talk next week.